What? Okay. What? Yeah. Yeah. So at the moment, I am watching a video about bad characters on a tournament by turning down four wall. Shout outs to him. Great video. Let me turn on the sound real quick so you guys can hear it. At some point, when I'm done eating, right now I'm eating, go into ID.
Make it into grand finals on the winner's side, something he wasn't able to do at Genesis or GOML. Wizrobe, who played Captain Falcon, had made it back to grand finals here on the loser's side. And by the way, just as like a brief tangent, Captain Falcon is sort of an honorary or meme bad character entry, largely because there was this like unspoken prophecy that Captain Falcon would never be able to win a major after Isaiah had done it in 2005. But literally 2 weeks before Smash Summit 8, Wizrobe had won Smash and Splash 5, which was crazy, but it also gave us one of the most electric pop-offs of that year as well.
Oh, that's it! That's it! What was that?
Okay, I'm sorry, tangent over. Anyway, let's get back to Axe. Grand Finals for Smash Summit 8, and for the literal first time ever in major tournament history, we would have a Pikachu up against a Captain Falcon to win a major. A second place exit would give one of these players about $6,000, while a win here would guarantee almost twice that at close to $11,000. And for two pretty unique characters to be fighting for that here, made that event a really big deal. While Wizrobe was able to win the first set to reset the bracket, Axe still had that extra set of buffer because he came from the winner's side, which he would leverage heavily by going up 2-0. After all, he had already beaten Wizzy once to make it into Grand Finals, and now that he was up 2 games, he had the luxury of counter picks on his side. And even after dropping one of his games of buffer, Axe was able to win his and Pikachu's first ever major, becoming one of only around 20 players at that time to have done so in the game's history.
Oh, what a sneaky up air!
That's damage.
He's gonna get the grab.
Here we go.
Up throw.
This is what
What's he gonna get here? Up smash. Thunder. 85. He's off stage. Axe is your Smash Summit 8 champion.
Axe did it.
He's done it.
A Pikachu has won a major Smash Summit 8.
Oh my.
After a year of second place victories and almost year for Axe, he does
After
it.
years and years of being on.
Did against that character for about 10 years until that streak was broken in 2022. Versus Mango and Leffen playing Falco and Fox, he could leverage Pikachu's early Gimp abilities against a character known to have exploitable recoveries. And versus Wizrobe's Captain Falcon, we could see how well stages came into effect, with a chain grab on Final Destination allowing Axe to cross the finish line. Even after his win, not many competitive players dared to try out this Pokemon, and no one has ever gotten this close since. And while the two characters we've talked about so far are now more or less relevant in today's meta thanks to these players, this next character was one seen as so weird, so different, and so, well, bad that it was barely used by anyone. Well, except for one player.
Yoshi!
AMSA began entering tournaments in 2013, and during that time there were hardly, if any, Yoshi players. In fact, the tier list at that time placed him as the 6th worst character in the game for a lot of reasons. Yoshi was just strange. He couldn't jump out of his shield, a technique literally the entire rest of the cast could do, which put him at a huge disadvantage on the defense. His up B, meant to be a recovery move for all characters, was pretty much useless for getting back to the stage, and he was overall just a functionally different character from the rest of the cast, having a pretty unique double jumping mechanic that only a few other characters sort of had. But AMSA always believed in Yoshi, and within his first year of competing, he was already ranked as the 77th best player in the world, and even peaked as the 2nd best player in the world at the end of 2022. Second was the key word here though. Although AMSA had gotten incredibly good at the game, he had still never won that coveted major tournament. What really solidified his place among the tippy top though was an event on October 9th, 2022, where nearly 1,000 competitors played at the Big House 10. AMSA was of course among that top talent, but pundits of the game were skeptical of his chances at best.
The narrative has been that AMSA can win a tournament, but like,
nah, he really.
The theory was, well, he could if. The theory was
he
okay.
kind of missed his window.
But like his steadfast belief in Yoshi, AMSA never gave up and he always played to win. He beat some of the best players in the world on a march to Grand Finals on the winner's side, including a win over Hungrybox, who had certainly had his number up until that point, and one over Mango, who was playing the best he had looked all year. Mango, called by Scar as one of the grittiest players he's ever known, showed that same grit to make it back into Grand Finals on the loser side and stood between AMSA and history. 2 games would pass going to AMSA, even shocking the commentators to merely think that a Yoshi could win over 20 years into Melee's release. But Mango wouldn't go down without a fight. If you're AMSA, you could lose here and go into the second set against the grittiest player in Melee, known as the King of Losers Runs. Or win now and become a champion.
And the crowd is saying, AMSA, unambiguously, open up!
Oh!
Mango's breaking it up! He's up!
Off a parry.
This is it!
No.
Look at it! Look at it!
The down smash.
It's over!
He did
It's over!
AMSA did it! AMSA did it! The first time in history AMSA wins a Super Major, the hardest tournament we've ever seen in 22 years.
In a way, it's kind of poetic that the last stock AMSA had to take to win one of the most stacked tournaments ever came from one of the first techniques he had ever practiced, the parry. AMSA, a player who had never given up, a player who had always played to win, regardless of how bad his character might have been perceived, had done it. This was AMSA's first ever major win, coming at an event many considered to be the most stacked ever, as well as the first tournament a Yoshi would win, making it the first major Melee tournament won with a new character since Axe at that Smash Summit 8. And I guess all he needed was that first one, because after this he would go on to win 2 more majors in 2022, at Apex and the Scuff World Tour. And he's still one of the only Yoshis out there who could do it.
And by the way, this is not just the first Big House he's won, it's the first major. The first major he's ever won, and it's the hardest one ever.
So, do you need to use the best character in order to win? I don't think so. I mean, hell, even in today's modern metagame, players are taking characters to heights never before seen. But what these 3 weaker characters have in common is that the players who decided to use them all had a reason to do so. They wanted to have fun, and they still wanted to win. They didn't use these characters because they were weak, they used them in spite of it. And I think that kinda rules. Thanks for watching.
Sorry, I was eating. That AMSA story. I liked it. It was pretty cool. The story where AMSA was competing at 10 head top. Big House 10. It was amazing. I think it's Mango, all the players. I love that story. Alright. One more video. And I'll get onto my idea. Oh, come on.
Answer. What do you have to say to the people that are watching?
That's not even a video clicked on.
대통령
There we go.
박근혜.
Chaebol is the Korean word for the powerful family-owned conglomerate.
From anguish to frustration.
The rich and powerful.
An emergency dispatcher in South Korea receives a distress call from a child aboard a ferry.
우리를 도와주세요. 배가 가라앉고 있어요.
The Seoul ferry is making a routine journey to the vacation hotspot Jeju Island, carrying 476 passengers. Most are school children and their teachers on a class trip. The dispatcher asks the boy to put the captain on the phone. If the ferry is sinking, why hasn't an adult called for help? Not all passengers understand the danger. As the boat starts to tilt, some kids yell with excitement as if they're on a theme park ride. But soon, the disaster is undeniable. Panic breaks out. Shortly after, the 6,800-ton vessel sinks. The boy who made the distress call and 300 other passengers, mostly other kids, drown. The tragedy traumatizes the nation. How could this happen? Who is responsible? Initially, the crew is blamed for incompetence and cowardice. When the boat was clearly sinking, the captain told the doomed passengers to stay put in their cabins. He and several crew members fled the scene and left the kids to drown. The South Korean president says their actions are akin to murder, and the captain is sentenced to life in prison. The Korean Coast Guard is also blamed for their sluggish response and for severely fumbling the rescue mission. But then, an investigation reveals that incompetence isn't the whole story. The ferry was more than twice as heavy as it was supposed to be. It had been illegally modified to hold more cargo. More cargo, of course, means more cash. The nation is outraged that someone so clearly prioritized profit over safety. Whoever owns the ferry needs to face the music. But who is it? In South Korea, corporate responsibility can be hard to pin down. Family-run conglomerates control sprawling networks of subsidiaries. Complex structures often hide who's really in charge. Some families control so much wealth they're deemed nearly untouchable. Time and again they dodge responsibilities for crimes, yet continue to amass wealth and influence.
Samsung Galaxy Round.
Oh, the Samsung people. YouTube is not liking that I can't stream properly. It's telling me that I am not problems. Great. Now I can't stream properly without it. Like, it's a good connection. Good connection. I don't know what's going on. Now it's saying it's a good connection, and then all of a sudden now my phone. Who did it? You're like, hold on. Hello? A warning. Can I even stream on YouTube without it like crashing like horrible? It shows that I'm having this hours. I guess I just have to go with it.
In this video, we will look at 3 of these families, including the one responsible for the ferry tragedy. South Korea's elite families are so powerful and influential that many say they are the ones actually running the country.
So they're gonna let their entire corporate side of South Korea basically almost run the country, and not the president, who has mostly the entire power over the country. Huh? That is some legal shit that needs to be stopped. There's no way that's even legal or even possible that to happen. Why are corporate people having majority rule or telling the people of their government or their president to do things for a favor, quote unquote favor, that favors them and not their people? Why is the government listening to these people? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't even matter if it's a money thing. You are very, very corrupt if you let entire companies control politicians don't count. If you let government can control like companies, hell, even the president gets controlled by a company, you're not even like a proper country. You're corrupt. That's not a straight country. That's not even proper. They're being corrupted by companies.
The South Korean economy.
Plus, these South Koreans also kind of like hate everybody. They are truthfully honest, and sometimes they can be brutally honest, and it sucks. Most of the time, them being honest is just them being dickheads.
Economy is an exceptional success story. After the Korean War in the 1950s, it was one of the poorest countries in the world. Today, it is the 14th biggest economy in the world. South Korea's rapid ascent is attributed primarily to its export-led economy and to the dominance of chaebol. Chaebol are large business conglomerates that are owned and run by family dynasties. Just after the war, the country's military dictators jump-started these family businesses with capital to rebuild South Korea's key industries. The chaebol thrived and diversified into sectors like tech, finance, and manufacturing. In just a few decades, they helped transform South Korea into a global industrial powerhouse. It's often called the miracle on the Han River. South Korea's top companies, Samsung, SK, LG, and Hyundai, are all family-run chaebol, and chaebol revenues account for the majority of the country's wealth. Samsung alone is responsible for a significant part of the country's GDP. For 2024, Bloomberg Economics estimates a record-high contribution from the company. According to their calculations, Samsung will likely be responsible for about half of the country's economic growth. When we work on stories like this one, we found it really helps to visualize.
Barely doing all the work. They're doing half the work, so they let companies do all this shit for growth products. You were basically kind of just back to ground zero, back to Vietnam, back to basically like Korean War. You were basically dead broke. If they let those companies fall, they're fucked. They don't have any economy. They don't have anything to buy. Everything's either so expensive it's not even possible to buy anything, or everything's not even available to purchase because you don't have money. Everybody's broke. Those companies fall, everybody is broken. Nobody can buy anything because there is actual no money involved in that country.
The data. Brilliant is an amazing tool.
Wait for my air to go.
Tool we've used to better
data. Give me the warning. Man, I hate YouTube. It's like worse than Twitch. Twitch, I can actually stream. Sometimes I may lag. That's because I have no fucking service. My data's being dropped. So no friends.
better understand data and see the connections between number sets. Their data visualization course is an excellent way to learn how to analyze trends and make data-driven decisions, all through interactive hands-on lessons. Plus, you can learn at your own pace, right from your phone. Brilliant is a powerful platform for building problem-solving skills across math, programming, AI, and more. Their content is designed by world-class experts from MIT, Caltech, Google, and more, with as little as 5 minutes per day. Brilliant is offering Fern viewers a 30-day free trial and 20% off their annual subscription. Head over to brilliant.org/Fern to check it out. Alright, back to Chaebol and their massive impact on the South Korean economy. All this concentrated wealth leads to a lot of concentrated power. Chaebol families enjoy a very cozy relationship
Why is Biden there?
with the federal government. They receive subsidies, tax incentives, and special favors. And political leaders rely on Chaebol for support and advice. For decades, Chaebol were widely celebrated as the pivotal drivers of South Korea's economic miracle. But the 1997 Asian financial crisis challenged the standing of the families. 13 of the top 30 Chaebol went technically bankrupt, revealing the risks of an economy relying so heavily on just a few companies. Nowadays, more and more South Koreans expressed concerns about the dominance of these conglomerates. Not only that, as the decades passed, the public watched Chaebol repeatedly caught up in scandals and crimes, embezzlement, bribery, labor law violations, health crises. For too long, the government has gone easy on these dynasties, and the people are increasingly fed up.
Korean Air. Don't tell me this is an airline. Don't tell me that's an airline. It's an airline! Of course it is. Of course it is. Why am I even saying it? Don't tell me it is an airline. I'm an idiot. Of course an airline is involved in this. No wonder. Profit in commercial flights. I mean, they're gonna just copy what American Airlines does, but, you know, barely get away with it.
In December 2014, Korean Air Vice President and heiress Heather Cho had an infamous meltdown. It was over a couple of macadamia nuts. A flight attendant had the gall to serve her nuts in a bag instead of on a plate. Cho shouted abuse. She then called over the cabin crew chief and made him kneel to ask for forgiveness. Under her orders, the passenger plane returned to the gate, where the cabin crew chief was fired on the spot. If you're not Korean and you hear about this story, it might just seem funny or absurd. But in South Korea, it was fuel to the flame of growing public frustration. Yet another reminder of Chaebol leaders' arrogance and entitlement. They took their rage to social media and later the streets. At first, Korean Air tried to downplay the incident. They released a statement saying that because Cho's executive role was to oversee cabin service, it was only natural that she would discipline an offending staff member. But people weren't having it. The public already had issues with the Korean Air dynasty and their shameless antics. A few years prior, Cho's brother was investigated for pushing an elderly woman. Her father has been convicted of tax fraud, and Cho herself was criticized for strategically giving birth to her twin sons in the US, which exempted them from South Korea's compulsory military.
Oh, okay, never mind. So she gave birth to 2 American kids that are Korean. Or probably partly Korean. So it's like half, whatever, and half Korean. Because she didn't want the kids to be forced to do military work for a year. Or I don't know how long they have it for.
And from her post.
죄송합니다.
She was then convicted of violating aviation safety and abusing her power. She faced
violation of aviation safety. Well, no wonder she did that. She got pissed at the cabinet dude, or the pilot, one of the people, and fired him after they immediately got off the plane. Because she was served nuts in a bag, which is kind of what most airlines are doing nowadays. They can't use plates because it's extra money, and they want to save that extra money for them.
Faced up to 15 years in prison, but was given the minimum sentence of 12 months. She only served 5 of those before a judge reduced her sentence.
That is so
the Chaebols.
So there's no point in really sentencing them because there's no punishment for them. All they get is a slap on the wrist for like a few months and get back to normal. Even though she's saying she's like sad, she's gonna fake it and then go back to normal.
Influence runs deep, all throughout the government, even to the very top.
I government's out of martial law.
Already in the 2012 South Korean presidential election, a key
reason for some reason, even though they aren't even doing that yet. He got appealed or something like that. He's off it and now he's back on.
key debate was on how to limit the power of these families. Park Geun-hye became South Korea's first female president.
2013년 2월 25일 대통령 박근혜.
When she took office, many worried it would be business as usual. Her father was Park Chung-hee, the military leader who took power in a 1961 coup. He is considered the chief architect of the chaebol system, and Geun-hye became her father's stand-in first lady when she was 22 after a North Korean assassin had killed her mother. Park Chung-hee's admirers credit him for the miracle on the Han River. His critics remember the cruelty of his iron-fisted rule and his imprisonment of dissidents. One of these was Miss Park's key rival in the election. His name is Moon Jae-in, a former human rights lawyer and anti-authoritarian activist during the dictator's reign. Now, in 2012, the ex-dictator's daughter campaigned on a more business-friendly platform than her liberal opponent Moon. She was focusing on reform rather than punishment. Her stance was that chaebol might be unruly, but with the right reforms, they could play fair. But then...
Could play fair. Play fair my ass. I was just saying a huge fucking lie right now. Hello? Could play fair. I could play fair giving back quality products that aren't just them trying to downplay productivity and like bad materials, or just them being greedy and not trying to give everything to the fucking customer and just them saving everything and denying claims like how American healthcare has been going right now.
Seevol happened. This incident was much bigger than run-of-the-mill embezzlement or tax evasion. Faced with a furious and traumatized public, Park vows to bring the accountable people to justice.
Yeah, right. Millionaires with no face.
After analyzing complex financial records, the Yu family is eventually found to own the ferry. The Yus are well known for their eccentric patriarch, a reclusive businessman / cult-like pastor / aspiring artist named Yu Byung-on. The president says he and his family are the root cause of this calamity and issues a warrant for their arrest. Yu Byung-on keeps a low profile and is rarely seen in public. He's known as No Face, and now he's nowhere to be found.
He left the country.
President Park kicks off the largest manhunt in South Korean history to find Yu. She mobilizes the military and nearly 10,000 police officers to raid the headquarters of the Evangelical Baptist Church of Korea, a religious sect that Yu co-founded in 1962. Yu is a charismatic and inspiring speaker. He was able to attract a substantial following and elicit substantial favors. By the 1970s, Yu's growing church became a money-making enterprise. He persuaded members to donate to or invest in companies linked with the church. Those companies sold a wide range of products, from organic milk to auto parts to anima kits. These companies made Yu and his church very rich. At that time, South Korea was still poor and money for investment was scarce. The government granted capital to only a select number of families, but Yu's approach of raising funds through evangelizing allowed him to rapidly grow his businesses even without governmental support. By the 1980s, his business network was considered a mini chaebol. But then, controversy hits. In 1987, 32 alleged members of Yu's church were found bound, gagged, and dead in the attic of a factory near Seoul. The authorities ruled the deaths as a murder-suicide pact linked to debts they couldn't pay. After the victims' financial records were probed, money was found going to Yu. He was investigated for suspicion that he was behind the alleged suicides, but the charges were dismissed due to lack of evidence. Nevertheless, courts did find evidence that he was using church members' money and properties to enrich his businesses. In 1992, Yu was jailed for fraud. Once released from jail, Yu attempts to restore his image. He gets really into naval ventures as this shipping company. At least $3.8 million went directly to the Yu family. It's the same company that owns and runs the Seevol ferry. 2 months after the ferry sank, Korean police raid Yu's compound. Hundreds of sect members are protesting the raid and attempt to build a blockade. A large banner reads, "We'll protect Yu Byung-yeon even if 100,000 church members are all arrested." Helicopters swirl overhead. Some cult members threaten to fight the police. Others vow to die as martyrs. But after combing the massive compound, the cops leave empty-handed. They don't know it yet, but Yu is hiding in a secret closet 300 kilometers away in his holiday home. A few days after the raid, and 18 days after Yu was last spotted, a farmer finds a dead body face up in an orchard. It's in an advanced state of decomposition, almost skeletal. It's at first impossible to tell who it is. The corpse is wearing expensive Italian clothes and is surrounded by bottles of rice wine, a bottle of shark liver oil, and a book written by Yu. After a 3-day autopsy and over a month of investigation, authorities confirmed that it is indeed Yu. A cause of death is never determined. More and more damning evidence keeps coming out about the government and the ferry. Auditors discovered that Coast Guard officials apparently turned a blind eye to the ferry's glaring safety problems after getting courted by Yu's shipping company over from a distance whether the ferry was overloaded. A major factor in its excessive weight turned out to be a marble art gallery on board. Yu personally insisted on